Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of my podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about relationships. And as usual, I'm going to start this podcast off with a quote. Keep away from those who try to belittle your ambitions. Small people always do that, but the really great make you believe that you can become great. And that's a quote by Mark Twain. So today, we're going to be talking about relationships, but I want you to understand, or I want to try to convey that I'm talking about all types of relationships. I'm not just talking about romantic relationships or relationships with coworkers or your relationship with food or trauma or any type. It's everything. It's all types of relationships. Um, Relationships are by and large the same, and what I mean by that is that like the components of a relationship are the same. So like the hard work, the effort, the sacrifice, commitment, open mindedness that you have to have with your relationship to your spouse is the same thing that you got to have in a relationship with your friends or in a relationship with your coworkers. Now, it may be to a lesser extent, but the components are still there in one form or another. And once you understand the relationships and in the context they exist, like a romantic relationship or a business relationship or whatever type of relationship, then you can learn how to exist within those parameters and to thrive within that environment more successfully. Um, the way that this podcast is worded, it may give um, the opinion that it's more geared towards talking about like a romantic relationship or specifically a relationship between like partners, like dating and stuff like that, but it really can encompass everything if you really just think about it. um so let's get started. One of the most important properties of humankind is the capacity to form and maintain relationships. These relationships are absolutely necessary for any of us to survive, learn, work, love, and procreate. So basically, we need relationships in order to thrive in the world. We form relationships with things and we don't even know it. Um, like some people will say, I have a love hate relationship with the gym, or I have a love hate relationship with food, or the typical sense of the word, like boyfriend, girlfriend, business partners, um, whatever. So basically, we need these relationships, and as human beings, we like to create relationships. We're social beings. We don't like to be isolated. We don't like to be alone. So creating relationships are large parts of our development, our interaction with people, and how we kind of move and thrive in the world. Look at places like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. All of those places are based on the premises of like networking, getting to know people, people liking your stuff, getting that positive feedback, that positive feeling you get from people approving of you, from being accepted in the groups and being a part of something bigger than yourself. And that's all based on relationships. That yearning to have relationships with people and to be a part of something other than yourself, to be a part of a group. Um, Human relationships take many forms, but most intense, most pleasurable, and most painful are those relationships with family, friends, and loved ones. Those are the ones that we hold dearest and closest to ourselves: family, friends, and loved ones. And these, and on the flip side of the coin, these relationships are also the ones that can cause the most trauma if they don't go along the typical terms. And I say typical very lightly because what's typical for you may not be typical for me. It's all relative. It's based on a baseline. So a baseline is you take a situation and this is normal for me. So if you go above that baseline or below that baseline, that constitutes or creates a deviation from the norm. But as long as it follows that baseline, then everything is good. So what's normal, again, it's relative. So what's normal to you may not be normal to me. So when I say a typical relationship, the way that I've existed in life with my family and with my mother, my grandmother, my brothers, my children and their mother, my fiance, it's different than how the person who is listening, or the people who are listening, may interact with their loved ones, and how they were brought up and stuff like that. Now, that's not to say that is bad. That's just typical for your interactions and how you grew up and stuff like that. It's not saying it's bad, it's just different. It was different than how like I was brought up and how my relationships went throughout my life. But different isn't bad. Again, it's just your baseline. It's how things were developed when you were coming up, when you were growing up, and what you've considered to be acceptable, and the type of way you like to exist in life, the type of way you like your relationships to go. But just understand that, you know, a lot of the things that we develop, like our characteristics and stuff like that, the foundation of our life as we're growing up and as children, the relationships that we have with our school teachers, our friends, our parents, um, the motivators, the mentors in our life, all of that stuff goes to form you, to develop you, and to help you become the person you are. The relationship I had with my grandfather is what helped me to become the man that I need to be. Um, I think that if it wasn't for my grandfather, in large part, that I would not have been able to accomplish mentally what I was able to accomplish. Even though I'm not saying like I'm some great person, I'm not bragging, but I'm saying having my grandfather in my life was very crucial to me, because it caused me to think a different way, and it caused me to think a different way at an early age. Sometimes in life, we have change that's brought about through you know learning the hard way, basically. Like, you have to experience it first, you have to lose, take an L, or it has to set you off your goal, take you off your path. And I mean, that again, that's not typical. That's for some people. Some people just listen, and they don't have to go through that experience, or feel that failure or that defeat. But my grandfather, the talks that he had, the example that he set by the way he lived his life, the people around him that he kept close, my family, my friends, his family, his friends, they all came together to develop me into the young man and the man that I would become. And even though my grandfather has since passed away, his legacy, I still feel like his legacy lives through me. And again, that's just because of our relationship. Now, because of the relationships that you have with people can create all type of effects in your life. Like, because of the relationship you have with your mother, it now has some type of adverse effect on how you have relationships with other people, or what you see as normal, how you should treat people and stuff like that. I mean, it's a whole host of effects that having different type of relationships can have in your life. Some for good and some for bad. They have a ton of studies on it, childhood development, and the importance of a child feeling certain type of emotions and having certain type of relationships as they develop. And it's amazing to see how a relationship just not expressed or not experienced in a healthy way could cause somebody to go like completely left. If you look at a lot of the serial killers or psychopaths, the relationships that they had with their parents, their mothers in specific, at most times their mothers in specific, but sometimes it's also their fathers or uncles or what have you. But the relationships that they have with these individuals at a young age does something to their psyche or their mentality, which caused them to be different than most people. Like, not feel compassion in the same way, not feel sympathy or empathy in the same way. And that deviation in their consciousness, that deviation in their psyche, causes them to be less compassionate and to be able to carry out the acts that they carry out. So, I mean, if not for anything, that's one of the best examples of how relationships can affect us formatively in our early years, and even throughout our lives. Even if we think it doesn't affect us as we grow up, we think we're hard, or we think we're tough, or you know relationships definitely affect us, and how we conduct those relationships definitely affect how we live. Every relationship that we develop, from the most casual to the most intimate, serves to help you become more conscious if we allow it. You can take relationships and look at them at a deeper sense instead of just surface level. So you could look at this relationship, and you can ask yourself questions like, how is this relationship affecting me? Is the relationship good or bad in my life? How could I contribute to the relationship better? How could the other person contribute to the relationship better? What is the objective of this relationship? Is it helping me moving towards or away from my goal? You know, is the stress in this relationship caused by me or the other person? Is it really a big deal what I'm fretting over or worrying about? And those questions that you ask yourself as you look deeper into the relationship and the part that you play in the relationship, taking ownership over what you do contribute and what you don't contribute to the relationship, you begin to become conscious of who you are and aware of who you are. Um, I'll give a personal example of my relationship. So when I first started out dating my fiance, things were rough. We had to figure things out, learn each other and stuff like that. So I was a little rough around the edges, I'll be honest. I was still in the Marines and I still had that mindset, um, which was very like straight, direct, to the point, and kind of nearsighted. I didn't see a lot of other things besides the objective I wanted to accomplish. I had on blinders, really. So we had a conversation, and through that conversation, I figured out what works and what doesn't work for her. So what I started doing was I
Your
started
task art
reading
journal
books.
workout.
I started reading books. I started going to a counselor. I started step back, asking myself hard questions. Started journaling and stuff like that. And it took some time. The change wasn't immediate, but over time, things started getting better. Communication started getting better. Experiences like as far as hanging out when we didn't have to go to work, and it wasn't so awkward. It was more free, more flowing, and I consider that another major change in my life because I really learned a lot about myself by just going deeper. Like instead of getting mad, getting angry, saying oh it's all her fault, putting all the blame on her, and not accepting my responsibility or the role that I play in it, I just took a step back. I looked at the situation as a whole, what I was trying to accomplish, who I was doing it for, and I just started to dig deeper into myself. I started to read, and less time on the video games, less time doing things that didn't serve me or serve the purpose I was trying to achieve. And in doing that, I became a better all around person. The reading of books that I initially read started leading to another type of book that I was reading, which gave me more knowledge about my history and it's in consciousness, awareness, my surroundings, it just brought me to a deeper level. So in seeking consciousness, or in seeking my true self and discovering my true self, it opened up a whole another side of myself that prior to this incident or this mark on my history I hadn't experienced. um I did not like reading. I would read in school because I had to in order to get good grades, but I was not the type of person that would just sit down and read a book, just to read a book. That was not me. But since that period that I'm now discussing, where me and my fiance had that shift, I've read more books in the past couple years than I read while I was in school. And every morning that I wake up, I read at least 10 pages of a book, or 10 pages, 30 minutes, whatever time allows. And then when I come home before I go to bed, I read. So I'm constantly reading now, which is constantly helping me to develop and become a better person, better father, better son, better grandson, better mentor, better at everything that I do, because I feel like I'm just developing myself over and over again. And even if it's stuff that I'm not currently pursuing, like a career in physics or anything like that, it's still fun to know, fun to learn. And that's just the power of relationships. So it trickles, just like I say in the other podcast, everything is connected. Think of it as a big spider web, and this is connected to all of that stuff as well. The power and challenge of your relationship is to learn what motivates you to make the choices you do. Again, we already discussed that. That's like talking about what's your drive, not motivation, because motivation is fleeting. Sometimes you're motivated to get out of bed, sometimes you're not. But when you're driven, you have that drive to get out of bed every morning because you know that after it's all said and done, through the power of compounding, if you keep doing this good behavior, that the benefits that you're going to reap are going to be better and better as time goes on. So you have to realize that the thing that motivates you is more important than temporary satisfactions. So you have to keep that in mind at all times, just like with everything else. It's all connected. It's just like a big spider web. The relationship that we feel are good make us feel hopeful, excited, and optimistic, and thus we want to do more. Relationships can have a strong impact on our emotions and our thoughts. And then this goes back to the TFAR model. So thoughts lead to feelings, which lead to actions, which lead to results. So the relationship that we have with certain things, or the emotions that these relationships spark up or make us feel, can make us take certain actions or have a big influence on the actions that we take, whether it's for good or it's for bad. Because while bad relationships can make us feel depressed, hopeless, and as if we aren't enough, and we want to do less, we feel less motivated or less worthy of what we're trying to attempt. So we have to be cautious of our relationship, because at the end of the day, the relationships have a strong pull on our emotions and on our thoughts. And that's why we also have to be conscious of the type of people that we have relationships with. Because if you're always surrounded by people who say negative things, who are negative, who practice negativity, then by default, you're going to be a negative person. And you're going to want to do less, and you're not going to want to move towards your dreams and towards your goals. You're going to feel like it's impossible. This is what I was born into, so how am I going to get out? You have to create a different stimulus. That's why it helps to go seek out a mentor or a life coach, because they're going to flood you with positivity, flood you with a different perspective to look at things through. So that's a great relationship to foster, because thoughts lead to feelings, which lead to actions, which lead to results. So we're now changing the way you think, the way you process things, and the way you view the world as a whole. You should try to be an island in a storm, meaning that no matter what ebbs and flows your relationship is going through, you don't change who you are or why you do what you do. Just because a relationship may have a bad moment or a bad season doesn't mean that you should change what you do. Think of it, or who you are. Think of it like sailing. If you're on a ship, a lot of us won't experience this because we're not sailors, but it's a good analogy because you can basically paint the picture with your mind. When you set out to sail, or when you set out on a mission or a voyage or a journey, the seas may be calm, and sometimes you may be fortunate, you navigate straight to the destination you need to go to. No events coming along the way, no storms, it's just smooth seas all the way there. But there are oftentimes storms, and these storms test your ability to navigate. They, may make the trip longer, and it may set you off course, and they may just present a whole type of difficulties, a whole bunch of difficulties. But it doesn't change the fact that you need to reach that destination. It doesn't change the fact that you need to complete that journey. So you have to persist despite the storm. And that's the same thing with relationships. Just because I'm going to speak in the sense of a romantic relationship or a relationship with a partner, just because you're going through a difficult time or a difficult moment doesn't mean that you should lose focus of the mission, what you're trying to do, and who you are as a person. Are the actions that you're taking going to help you achieve, or is it going to hinder your goal with that person, whatever that goal may be? Marriage or children, or buying a house, whatever the goal could be. It could be a million different goals. But are the actions that you're taking now in this storm going to further you or hinder you from making it towards your goal? So you need to be an island in the storm. Even if the other person's having a bad day and you're having a good day, or you're having a bad day, they're having a good day, you're not seeing eye to eye, you're butting heads, it just seems like y'all can't get along. You need to be an island in the storm, meaning feel the emotions you feel, but be conscious and aware enough that you don't let those emotions carry you into doing something irrational. You always keep the bigger goal in mind and the bigger objective in mind. Now, change and compromise are part of a healthy relationship, but be sure that you are doing them for the right reasons. This is those relationships, I'm speaking about those relationships where you compromise who you are and it affects you negatively. You have to be conscious of that. Like, why are you compromising? And is it for the right reasons? Is the other person compromising as well? Does the compromising help to serve your goal or the goal of the relationship? Again, we just have to ask ourselves the hard questions. And in asking ourselves these hard questions, it's going to help us overall to decide the course of action. Now, if compromising is a big part of the relationship. Both parties should compromise. It's healthy to compromise. But at the same time, you have to think and process and rationalize why you're compromising. Sometimes it may be irrational and it may not make sense because emotions are irrational. But for the most part, like, for example, if one person is always asking you to compromise, and you're compromising who you are as an individual, your ethics, your standards, the foundation of who you are, but this person isn't compromising, this person isn't contributing to the relationship, and they're just doing it basically so they can feel safe, but without exposing themselves to, being hurt or any of those things as well, then that's one-sided. And by and large, I don't feel you should compromise until y'all have a serious conversation and, y'all see eye to eye or some type of understanding is achieved, because one person is getting all of the things that they need out of the relationship while you're not getting the things that you need out of your relationship. So it's not a successful or helpful relationship in what you're trying to achieve, unless you're perfectly fine with that. And if you're perfectly fine with that, there's nothing wrong with that. Your painful relationship helps you to understand that every choice you make contributes to what you create. Choice is the process of creation. In a relationship, the most powerful tool that you have is the power of choice. And you could you're choosing to be in that relationship. You're choosing the person you're in that relationship with. You're choosing to compromise. You're choosing to stay there during the hard times. You're choosing not to stay there during the hard times. You have the power of choice. So at any point in time, if you're experiencing something that you don't want to experience, you have the power to choose something different. A lot of people don't think they have a choice, like, I was born this way, this is my relationship with life, I don't have a choice, this is just my situation. It's not true. Perspective drives reality. So the way that you look at things is the way that you're going to experience things. And you always have a choice. Choice is always there. You have a choice to get in the car with that person. You have a choice to go to the store with that person. You have a choice to be in a relationship with that person. You have a choice to not be in a relationship with that person. You have a choice to eat that Snickers when you know that your diet says that you shouldn't. Your relationship with food. You have a choice to go to the gym when you feel tired and you don't want to. Your relationship with working out. So in all your relationships, you have a choice. And choices are very powerful because that's the power that we hold in a relationship, and nobody can take that away from us. As much as it may seem that we don't have a choice, ultimately at the end of the day, you have a choice. It just may be a hard choice. As I said before, we all have the power to choose, and in relationships, it is no different. We always have a choice. Again, we just went over that. That's just me repeating myself. And just recognizing this power is extremely important because we've all gone through life where we've been in situations where maybe we felt like we didn't have a choice. And maybe that was for the good or for worse. Like my family is, I'm not saying my family in particular, but just an example. Like my family, I'm going to give my family this type of lifestyle. So I have no choice but to work. Other people don't see things that way. They think they want to live the life they want to live, and they don't hold that responsibility or that burden of supporting their family. So they choose to live a different type of lifestyle. again, it's all a choice. You know, you have a choice to go this way and you have a choice to go that way. We all have choices. So again, relationships are very crucial, and not just talking again in the sense of a romantic relationship or the relationship with a partner, but our relationship with everything, our relationship with our environment, our relationship with our with food, with working out, with reading, with, I mean, you could put a relationship with anything basically. And taking a step back when you're going through adversity and just look at things as a whole and asking yourself hard questions can help you to largely analyze your relationships and, you know, take them apart, dissect them, and see what's wrong with the relationship. If the relationship doesn't serve you, if it serves you, that's fine and dandy, it's good, I'm happy for you. But if it doesn't serve you, then you need to analyze the relationship. You need to break it apart and see what things you can do better, what things the other person could do better. Or, you know, if it's a relationship with the gym, working out, how can you change your mindset or your perception of working out and going to the gym to make it, you know, be a positive thought or evoke positive emotions in your mind, thus helping to serve you and create consistency so that you can build a good habit through the power of compounding. And just again, this is just me trying to get you to think, you know, about something, create a spark, and maybe look at a little bit deeper into evaluating your surroundings and your relationship.